Capability is not the same as proof of capability. It sounds obvious, but most specialist contractors have never felt the full commercial consequence of it, because it doesn't show up as a lost job you can point to. It shows up as the shortlist you were quietly left off. You can do genuinely excellent work, complex projects delivered well, strong professional relationships, and still fail to prove any of it in a way that helps the next serious buyer decide. That gap is costing firms far more than they realise, and it doesn't get fixed by better photography. Here's the specific failure mode. A firm is genuinely good at what it does. The work is delivered well. The relationships are strong. Then they try to use that track record to win the next serious project. And the evidence that they have doesn't do the job they need it to do. The website looks professional. The project photos are all good. The case studies are there. But the sophisticated buyer reads it and the proof is too thin. Doesn't compress risk. It creates interpretation work. The buyer has to infer from incomplete evidence. They have to decide how much weight to put on claims they can't verify from the record in front of them. Now put that buyer under pressure with 3 or 4 other firms on the shortlist. That interpretation burden is a real disadvantage, regardless of your actual capability. Whoever's evidence reduces the buyer's uncertainty gets shortlisted. Whoever's evidence increases it gets passed over. So here's the reframe. Proof is a different product from the work itself, and for most specialist contractors, it's the missing product. This isn't about the website. It means the website, the portfolio, the case study, and the pre-qualification response all need to carry the right proof. Right now, they look presentable, but they don't help the buyer put the reputation on the line for you, because that's what the buyer is actually doing. They're not reading your evidence for completeness, they're reading it for signals that let them reduce the uncertainty about one decision. Can I recommend or shortlist this firm for this project in front of this client? With my professional reputation on the line if I get it wrong. The question isn't, is this a good firm? It's, can I justify this appointment to myself and to the people I'm accountable to? And those questions are specific, not have they done this type of work and complexity, but have they refurbished an occupied Grade 2 listed building with a live institutional client in residence during the works? Not can they manage a professional, not have they done this type of work and complexity, but have they refurbished an occupied Grade 2 listed building with a live institutional client in residence during the works? Not can they manage a professional team, but when the unforeseen condition emerged in week 4, how did they communicate it? How did they manage the program impact? That organised collection of specific project evidence across different project types, conditions, and team configurations is what I call the proof stack. Portfolio is a selection of your best work presented for visual and reputational impact. That has value, but by itself it doesn't carry enough proof. A proof stack is different. It's an evidence base that lets a buyer form a capability assessment and critically justify that assessment to others. A strong proof stack entry has 3 layers. First, project knowledge, the real version, not the website copy. The actual scope, including what changed during delivery. The conditions on site, occupied, constrained, access, heritage, phased. The professional team named and how relationships were managed. What was technically complex and how it was approached. What the client's specific concerns were. What position did the firm take on pricing, risk, and scope definition? What did they protect in the contract and why? What was the risk assessment before they signed? This layer shows commercial maturity. It tells a buyer whether the firm can manage its own commercial position, which is a proxy for whether they'll manage yours. Third, delivery knowledge, how the team actually worked, what procedures existed, what the site inspection standard was, what happened when things went wrong, and how the firm's process handled it. They can't know the contractor they appoint will deliver. They're making a probabilistic judgment on the available evidence. Specific evidence compresses risk. When all three layers are captured, the result is evidence that can be evaluated, not content that has to be interpreted. The portfolio was never the problem. The thin proof inside it is the problem. When a buyer can read a concrete record of how a firm handled the exact conditions this project involves, the residual uncertainty drops. The decision becomes easier and more defensible. Generic evidence does the opposite. Professional language about quality and satisfaction with no specific detail leaves the buyer to decide on faith. The uncertainty stays high, and a buyer who appoints on high uncertainty is taking a personal risk. If the firm performs badly, they made a bad recommendation and they're accountable for it. So the buyer has a strong incentive to reduce the fee to firms they already know, or firms whose evidence creates enough confidence to reduce that personal risk. A firm with strong specific evidence lets the buyer do that. A firm with generic evidence doesn't. This is not a subtle effect. It's the primary mechanism that determines shortlisting in serious commercial construction. And most specialist contractors operate with generic evidence, not because the capability isn't there, but because their project knowledge has never been captured in a form that can do this work. I can say this because I've sat on the other side of the table. When I was evaluating contractors for developer clients, I was reading project evidence for specific signals. How did they manage access constraints? How did they coordinate with the architects and engineers? How did they handle program pressure? What was the workmanship standard under difficult conditions? Photos of completed work doesn't show any of that. A website description doesn't show it if it only describes the finished result. But the website can show it if the evidence is built properly. The conditions, the decision, the constraints, the team, pressure, the judgment. And that's when a website stops being a brochure and starts being proof. The contractors I could confidently shortlist were the ones where that depth was available. The ones I passed over or had to run more due diligence on were the ones where the evidence was too thin to form a confident assessment. And that plays out every day in serious market with architects, developers, employers agents, procurement leads. Here's where this connects to AI, because a lot of firms are now reaching for it. When a contractor uses AI to produce a pre-qualification, a case study, a capability statement, the output is only as good as what the AI can draw on. Feed it the thin website version of your project knowledge, and it gives you an upgraded version of thin, better sentences, cleaner structure, more confident language, but no more specific than the source. The response is only as good as what was retrieved, and what's retrieved is only as good as what was captured. Thin in, thin out, no matter how good the tool. The proof stack is the source layer that makes AI output specific instead of generic. Let me deal with the three responses I often hear. 1. Our clients are confidential, we can't publish this. Strong project evidence doesn't require publication. It requires structure. Internal evidence records used to produce client-specific responses with the right confidentiality. Those are more valuable than published case studies. The structure is the asset. Publication is optional. We've tried case studies. They don't help. The case study problem is almost always a depth problem, not a format problem. A case study that names the project, shows a photo, and describes the scope in general terms isn't proof, it's content. The buyers who matter are looking for evidence that they can evaluate. Deep project records provide it. Generic case studies don't. 3. We're too busy to document this properly. Documentation done months after completion takes far longer than capture done in the real time. A structured process that runs alongside delivery takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes per project stay, and the return per minute is asymmetric because the evidence compounds across every future use. So here's the test. It isn't whether your portfolio looks good. The test is whether a serious buyer could read your current project evidence and form an accurate, confident assessment of your capability and fit for a specific project, without needing to speak to you first. If the answer is yes, the foundations of your proof stack are there. If the answer is no, if your evidence describes work that was done but doesn't let the buyer evaluate how it was done, under what conditions, to what standard, then the evidence gap is real and it's costing you more than any marketing improvement could recover. So before you spend a penny rebuilding anything, do one thing. Run the free 5-minute buyer read on your own site. It reads your homepage and a project page and an about page the way a serious buyer does. It'll show you in about 5 minutes where your proof is too thin to carry the decision. The link's in the description. And if that read shows the gap is real, that's exactly what the opportunity leakage audit is for, where I go through your public facing material the way I used to evaluate contractors from the funder's side of the table and give you a written report of where you're leaking opportunity and what to fix. Because the buyer who can shortlist you from your record is a different buyer from the one who can only shortlist you because they already know you. The buyer who can read your proof before the conversation even starts has a stronger reason to keep you in consideration and eventually a stronger reason to put their reputation on the line for you. That's it for this one. This video was about the evidence, the proof itself. The next one goes up a level. Once your proof exists, you need a system that puts it into work across your whole business, so you're not the bottleneck. That system is the AIOS audit flow, a full operating review that finds where the opportunity leaks across everything you do, not just a website. That's what I'll walk